Catherine Zeta-Jones was never just another Hollywood beauty. She was a girl from Swansea who grew up admiring the old glamour of women like Elizabeth Taylor and dreamed of something far beyond the small streets of Wales. The daughter of a candy factory owner and a seamstress who somehow became one of the most unforgettable women ever to stand in front of a camera. She had the face. She had the voice. She had the fire. From the Mask of Zorro to Chicago, from the Oscar to the red carpets, Catherine seemed to have everything a woman could dream of. Fame, beauty, talent, children, and a marriage to one of Hollywood's most powerful men. But behind that perfect image was a truth far more painful than most people ever knew. A husband's cancer, a private diagnosis, a marriage tested in public. A life slowly moved away from Hollywood, not because she was fading, but because she was trying to survive. And now, seeing Catherine Zeta-Jones living more quietly, farther from the Hollywood center that once worshipped her, is hard to watch. Because this is not the story of a fallen star. It is the story of a woman who kept smiling while carrying something invisible. Before Catherine Zeta-Jones became the woman the world stared on red carpets, she was a little girl in Swansea, Wales, surrounded by a life that did not look like Hollywood at all. There were no studio gates, no agents waiting outside, no photographers calling her name. There was the ordinary rhythm of a Welsh family. Her father worked in the sweet business. Her mother worked as a seamstress. There were fabrics, practical conversations, family routines, and the kind of life where glamour did not arrive in limousines. It arrived in imagination. Catherine did not come from a famous family. She was not born with a Hollywood last name. She did not inherit an industry. She did not grow up with directors at the dinner table or producers calling the house. What she had was something harder to explain. She had certainty. Even as a child, there was something in her that seemed already pointed toward a stage. She loved performance before she understood the cost of it. She danced. She sang. She entered local productions. She moved with the seriousness of someone much older, as though she already knew that childhood would not hold her for very long. And there was something else. Something small, physical, and permanent. As a child, Catherine underwent a tracheotomy that left a small scar on her neck. In an industry that later became obsessed with smooth skin, perfect angles, and flawless surfaces, that scar could have been treated like something to hide. But Catherine did not erase it. That tiny mark stayed with her. A reminder that even before fame, even before cameras, even before the world began calling her beautiful, her body had already known fear. Her body had already known emergency. Her body had already been open so she could breathe. Think about that for a moment. Before she ever had to fight Hollywood, Catherine Zeta-Jones had already fought for air. Maybe that is why there was always something different in her beauty. It was not empty. It was not soft in the way Hollywood sometimes wants women to be soft. There was a sharpness to it, a survival instinct, a look in her eyes that made people feel she had arrived from somewhere real. As a child, Catherine admired the old movie stars. She looked at the kind of women Hollywood once built myths around. Elizabeth Taylor was one of those figures. Not just beautiful, but enormous, dramatic, grand, impossible to ignore. And somewhere in Swansea, a young Catherine looked at that kind of glamour and believed, quietly or not quietly, that she could belong to a world like that too. That is what makes the beginning of her story so moving. She was not standing in Beverly Hills, saying she wanted to be a star. She was in Wales. She was in a working family. She was in a place where dreams like that can sound almost too big when spoken out loud. But Catherine did not only dream. She moved. She started training young. She performed young. She left comfort young. She stepped toward the stage with a kind of discipline that most children do not have and most adults cannot maintain. By her teenage years, she was no longer simply performing for fun. She was preparing for a life. At 15, she left for London to pursue her career. 15. That is the age when many young girls still need someone to remind them to bring a coat, to come home on time, to be careful crossing the street. Catherine was stepping into a city that could swallow grown adults whole. London was not gentle. It did not open its arms just because a girl from Swansea wanted something. There were auditions. There were waiting rooms. There were cold mornings. There were stages where nobody knew her name. There were people who looked at her and saw only a pretty girl, not the hunger underneath. No one becomes Catherine Zeta-Jones by accident. The world later made her look effortless. That was part of the illusion. The hair, the smile, the gowns, the old Hollywood posture. People looked at her and assumed everything must have come easily because she made everything look easy. But that is one of the cruelest things about being gifted. When you make pain look graceful, people stop asking how much it hurts. Catherine worked. She trained. She learned. She pushed herself into rooms where no one was required to care. She built the kind of discipline that cannot be faked when the camera finally comes close. And then came the first real turning point. The darling buds of May made her a household name in Britain. Almost overnight, people who had never heard her name suddenly knew her face. She had that rare quality television cannot manufacture. The camera did not simply record her. It responded to her. Audiences were charmed. Men admired her. Women watched her. The press noticed her. But early fame brought a strange trap. The more beautiful Catherine appeared, the more people underestimated the work underneath. That would follow her for years. Catherine Zeta-Jones was so beautiful that some people needed to be convinced she was also talented. And that is a particular burden. Because beauty opens doors, yes, but it also creates suspicion. It makes people think you were invited, not that you earned your way in. Catherine had to prove herself again and again. She had to prove she could act. She had to prove she could sing. She had to prove she could dance. She had to prove she was not simply a face. And she did. When Hollywood finally came for her, it did not receive a fragile young woman hoping to be shaped. It received someone trained, disciplined, hungry, and already aware that the world could turn admiration into judgment in a second. Then came the Mask of Zorro, and everything changed. In 1998, Catherine Zeta-Jones did not just appear in Hollywood. She arrived like a woman stepping out of another era. Opposite Antonio Banderas, she was elegant, physical, fiery, and impossible to look away from. She had that rare combination the movie industry is always searching for, but almost never finds. She looked like a star. She moved like a dancer. She fought like she meant it. She smiled like she knew something the audience did not. Hollywood had seen beautiful women before. It had seen talented women before. But Catherine carried the old glamour of the past with the force of someone modern enough to command the room herself. After that, the rise was fast. Entrapment brought more attention. Traffic brought seriousness. Then came Chicago. And with Chicago, Catherine did something very few actresses ever do. She took all the doubts people had about her and crushed them under one performance. Velma Kelly was not a role for someone who wanted to be admired gently. It demanded control, danger, rhythm, heat, and confidence. Catherine gave it all of that. She was sharp. She was funny. She was fierce. She was controlled. She carried the kind of stage power that only comes from years of training, years of hunger, and years of refusing to be dismissed. And then she won the Academy Award. The girl from Swansea had become Oscar-winning Catherine Zeta-Jones. Think about what that means. The little girl who had looked at images of old Hollywood glamour had become the kind of woman other little girls would look at in magazines. The daughter of a sweet business father and a seamstress mother was now standing on the highest stage in entertainment, holding one of the most famous trophies in the world. It should have been the beginning of peace. But fame does not bring peace. Sometimes fame only gives your pain better lighting. By then, Catherine was no longer just an actress. She was an image, and that image became almost too perfect to survive. The beauty, the award, the marriage, the children, the red carpets, the famous husband, the big houses, the magazines calling her glamorous. From the outside, it looked like life had rewarded her completely. But when the world decides your life is perfect, it becomes much harder to admit that something inside you is not. And Catherine's private life was becoming heavier than anyone understood. In 1998, around the time her Hollywood star was exploding, Catherine met Michael Douglas. He was not just another actor. He was Hollywood royalty, the son of Kirk Douglas, a man with decades of fame behind him, a man whose name already belonged to film history. He was also 25 years older than her. The age difference became part of the story immediately. The press could not leave it alone. Some people were fascinated. Some were skeptical. Some were cruel. But Catherine and Michael moved forward anyway. They married in 2000. To the public, it looked like a coronation. The young Welsh beauty and the Hollywood titan. The Oscar-winning family. The elegant couple. The kind of marriage magazines love because it looks expensive, romantic, and unlikely enough to keep people staring. Then came their children. Dylan was born in 2000. Karis was born in 2003. And Catherine entered one of the most demanding seasons of a woman's life, while the whole world was still looking at her as if she were a fantasy. She was a movie star. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was a public figure. She was a woman expected to remain beautiful, grateful, composed, and available. That is a lot for anyone. But Catherine made it look smooth. That may have been the problem. She had spent so much of her life being excellent that people assumed excellence was effortless for her. She could stand beside Michael Douglas in a gown, smile for cameras, speak gracefully in interviews, and make it seem as though nothing could touch her. But behind that smile was pressure. The pressure of being watched. The pressure of being compared. The pressure of being a mother while still being judged as a woman. The pressure of being married to a legend while trying not to disappear inside his shadow. The pressure of remaining Catherine Zeta-Jones every time she stepped outside. And for women like Catherine, aging begins long before age actually arrives. It begins the moment the world starts asking whether you can remain what it first loved. For years, Catherine carried this with dignity. She did not complain loudly. She did not make herself a victim. She kept working. She kept mothering. She kept appearing beside her husband. She kept proving that the golden couple was still golden. But life was preparing something much harder. In 2010, Michael Douglas was diagnosed with cancer. Suddenly, the red carpets did not matter. The beautiful photographs did not matter. The public image did not matter. Catherine was no longer standing beside a Hollywood icon. She was standing beside her husband, a man facing a terrifying illness. Cancer changes the air inside a family. Anyone who has lived near it knows this. The house becomes quieter. The phone ringing feels different. Doctor appointments create a rhythm no one asked for. Ordinary days are broken apart by words like treatment, prognosis, radiation, chemotherapy, survival. And Catherine, who had already spent years being strong in public, now had to be strong in private in a completely different way. This was not a bad review. This was not a difficult role. This was not a tabloid headline. This was the possibility of losing the man beside her. Michael's diagnosis was reported as advanced throat cancer. The treatment was serious. The fear was real. And Catherine, like so many spouses in that situation, had to become calm for everyone else while something inside her was shaking. She had children to protect. She had a husband to support. She had a public watching for signs of collapse. That is one of the cruelest parts of being famous during a private crisis. You are not allowed to simply suffer. You are observed while suffering. People study your face. They ask whether you look tired. They turn your pain into speculation. And Catherine did what she had always done. She showed up. She stood beside him. She smiled when she had to. She kept the family moving. She kept the fear behind closed doors as much as she could. But there are some burdens the body cannot carry quietly forever. If you have ever had to be strong for someone else while quietly falling apart yourself, tell me in the comments, because you already understand what Catherine was carrying. In 2011, Catherine made a decision that shocked many people. She sought treatment for bipolar II disorder. For some, the news seemed sudden. But private suffering rarely begins when the public hears about it. By the time the world learns the truth, the person has often been fighting alone for years. Bipolar II is often misunderstood. People hear the word bipolar and imagine something loud, chaotic, obvious. But bipolar II can be much quieter than that. It can hide behind productivity. It can hide behind charm. It can hide behind long working hours, bright energy, perfect smiles, and the ability to keep going long after anyone else would have stopped. The highs can look like confidence. The lows can look like exhaustion. And because the world rewards high-functioning pain, many people do not notice until the person is already breaking. For Catherine, the diagnosis gave a name to something invisible. And there's a strange grief in that. A diagnosis can be a relief because it explains the pain, but it can also be heartbreaking because it means the pain was real all along. It means those years of confusion were not weakness. It means all those moments when she may have wondered why she felt something she could not explain were part of a condition she had not chosen. Imagine being Catherine Zeta-Jones in that moment, one of the most beautiful women in the world. An Oscar winner, a wife, a mother, a woman whose image had been built on elegance and control, and then having to admit publicly that she needed help. That took courage, not the red carpet kind of courage, not the kind that gets applause immediately, the quiet kind, the kind that happens when a person stops protecting the image and starts protecting the self. Hollywood has always liked its stars wounded only in ways that can be packaged. A tearful interview, a comeback story, a dramatic quote, a neat ending. But mental health does not work that way. There is no clean final scene. Catherine entered treatment. She faced what she had to face. She allowed the world to know enough to understand that she was not invincible. And that was perhaps the bravest thing she had ever done, because the world had spent years treating her as if she were made of light. But she was human. She was a human being with a medical condition, a human being under pressure, a human being who had been carrying fear, marriage, motherhood, illness, fame, and expectation all at the same time. And then in 2013, she returned to treatment again. That second time matters, because people often celebrate the first time someone asks for help. They call it brave. They call it inspiring. They applaud the honesty. But the second time makes people uncomfortable. The second time reminds everyone that healing is not always a straight line. It reminds people that some battles are not conquered once. They are managed. They are lived with. They require discipline, humility, and the willingness to keep returning to the work even when the world wanted a neat recovery story. Catherine did not give the world a perfect recovery story. She gave something more honest. She showed that help is not failure. She showed that needing treatment again does not erase the courage of seeking it the first time. She showed that even a woman with an Oscar, a famous husband, beautiful children, and a face the world adored could still need support. And maybe that is why so many people love her even more now. Because the perfection broke open just enough for the truth to come through. If you have ever had to keep functioning while privately struggling, you understand something about Catherine's story that no headline can fully explain. If you have ever smiled because people needed you to smile, even when your own mind felt heavy, you understand. If you have ever been the strong one in the family, while quietly needing someone to be strong for you, you understand. That was Catherine's life. And while all of this was happening, her marriage was also being tested. By 2013, Catherine and Michael separated for a time. The world saw the announcement and immediately turned it into a story of collapse. The golden couple was cracking. The fairy tale was ending. The age gap had finally caught up with them. The pressure had become too much. But life is rarely that simple. Sometimes a marriage does not need space because the love is gone. Sometimes it needs space because two people are exhausted. Michael had survived cancer. Catherine had faced her own diagnosis and treatment. Both of them had been through something that changes a person. And when two people are changed by crisis at the same time, even love can become heavy. A marriage is not only romance. It is timing. It is health. It is patience. It is fear. It is the ability to look at someone you love and admit that both of you are tired. Their separation was painful, but it was not necessarily empty. It may have been the first honest breath after years of holding everything together for the cameras, for the children, for the image, for the idea that they had to remain the perfect couple everyone wanted them to be. And then they reconciled. Quietly. Not like a movie ending. Not like a grand public performance. But like two people who had seen the worst, stepped back, and still found their way toward each other again. That is not a fairy tale. That is something harder. A fairy tale ends before the medical appointments, before the diagnosis, before the exhaustion, before the children grow up, before the tabloids, before the nights when love is still there, but life has become too much. Catherine and Michael had to live after the fairy tale. And they did. That does not mean it was perfect. It does not mean every wound disappeared. It does not mean the public was wrong to notice the strain. But it does mean that the marriage became something more real than the glossy version people had consumed for years. They were not simply a glamorous couple anymore. They were survivors of the same storm. And Catherine, in particular, began to change the way she lived. This is a part of her story many people misunderstand. People looked at Catherine Zeta-Jones in the years after her greatest fame and asked, where did she go? Why was she not everywhere anymore? Why was she not constantly on red carpets? Why was she not in every major film? Why was Hollywood not using her the way it once had? And because Hollywood is cruel to women who become less visible, the easiest word people reached for was decline. They thought she was fading. But what if she was choosing? What if the woman who had spent her youth running toward the spotlight had finally learned that the spotlight can burn? Catherine did not disappear. She became more selective. She changed the pace of her life. She worked, but differently. She took roles that did not require her to live inside the constant machinery of old Hollywood visibility. She appeared when she wanted. She stepped back when she needed. And for a woman with bipolar II disorder, that kind of control is not a luxury. It is protection. Sleep matters. Routine matters. Stress matters. The body matters. The nervous system matters. The pressure of constant travel, constant attention, constant judgment. Constant performance can become dangerous in ways outsiders do not understand. People may see a quieter career and call it lost momentum. But for Catherine, quiet may have been survival. She was not the young woman leaving Swansea anymore. She was not the dazzling newcomer in Zorro anymore. She was not only Velma Kelly anymore. She was not only Michael Douglas's wife anymore. She was a woman who had learned the cost of giving too much of herself away. That is why her life now feels so different. Catherine Zeta-Jones is not living at the center of Hollywood noise in the way people might imagine. She has spoken about not being the person who spends her life socializing in Los Angeles, chasing every industry room, every dinner, every connection. Her world became quieter, more East Coast, more private, more surrounded by art and business circles than by the endless Hollywood performance of being seen. There is something deeply moving about that, because a woman who once seemed born for attention now appears to value distance. The woman who could stop a room now seems careful about which room she enters. The woman the camera loved now seems to understand that being loved by the camera is not the same as being safe. And then came another transition. The children grew up. Dylan and Karis, once the babies she protected while the world watched her marriage, became adults. Any parent knows that this is its own kind of heartbreak. It is beautiful, yes, it is what you work for. You raise children so they can leave. But when they do, the house changes. The sound changes. The mornings change. The mother changes. For years, Catherine had structured so much of her life around being present for them. After all the fame, after all the awards, after all the performances, motherhood had become one of the grounding forces in her life. It gave shape to the days. It gave meaning beyond applause. And then the children were no longer children. That is one of the quietest pains in life. It does not look dramatic enough for people to call it tragedy. No one sends flowers because your children grew up. No one writes headlines about the empty chair at breakfast. But every parent who has lived through it knows the ache. The house may still be beautiful, but it is quieter. The rooms may still be full of expensive things, but the voices are different. Have you ever stepped away from something not because you failed, but because you finally chose peace? If you have, you know why Catherine's quiet life should not be misunderstood. And Catherine, after everything she survived, entered that stage too. A woman in her mid-50s. A husband much older than her. Children grown. A career no longer built around constant visibility. A life moved away from the center of Hollywood attention. This is what makes her present chapter hard to watch. Not because she is destroyed. She is not. Not because she has lost her beauty. She is not. Not because her life is over. It is not. It is hard to watch because time has softened the image the world once froze in place. The Catherine people remember from Chicago is still there, but life has moved around her. The red carpets are fewer. The children are older. Michael is older. The industry has changed. The kind of glamour she represented has almost disappeared. And Catherine herself seems to have chosen something far more private than the world expected from her. That can be difficult for fans to accept, because fans do not only love a star, they love a version of time. When people see Catherine Zeta-Jones, they remember a whole era. They remember the late 1990s. They remember movie stars who look like movie stars. They remember magazines, award shows, big romantic dramas, red carpets that felt grand instead of disposable. Catherine belonged to that world. And now that world is mostly gone. So when people ask what has happened to Catherine Zeta-Jones right now, the answer is not simple. She is aging. She is choosing quiet. She is living beyond the image. She is managing a condition that never becomes convenient. She is watching her children become adults. She is standing beside a husband who has survived serious illness and grown older with her. She is no longer trying to be everywhere. And maybe that is what survival looks like when the camera stops demanding proof. But the public can be unforgiving when a woman stops performing youth. If she appears often, they say she is desperate. If she appears less, they say she is faded. If she looks glamorous, they say she is trying too hard. If she looks natural, they say she has changed. There is almost no way for a woman like Catherine to win in public. And yet she has carried herself with a kind of dignity that feels rare now. She does not beg the world to remember her. She does not seem to chase every headline. She does not need to remind people every week that she was once one of the most dazzling women alive, because the record is already there. The Mask of Zorro is there. Chicago is there. The Oscar is there. The Tony is there. The BAFTA is there. The photographs are there. The performances are there. But behind all of that is the part that matters more now. The woman is still there, not untouched, not unchanged, not frozen in the beauty of 2002, but still there. And maybe that is more powerful, because a frozen image is easy to worship. A real woman is harder. A real woman ages. A real woman gets tired. A real woman needs help. A real woman watches her children leave home. A real woman has to manage her mind, her marriage, her health, her memories, and her future. Catherine Zeta-Jones was sold to the world as a dream. But her real story is not about dreaming. It is about enduring. It is about a child with a scar on her neck who grew into a woman the world called flawless. It is about a girl from Swansea who left home before most people are ready to leave childhood. It is about a performer so beautiful that the world almost missed how hard she had worked. It is about a wife who stood beside cancer. It is about a mother who protected her children while living under public judgment. It is about a woman who admitted she needed treatment in an industry that often punishes honesty. It is about going back for help when help was needed again. It is about a marriage that had to step away from the public fantasy in order to survive the private truth. It is about choosing quiet and letting people misunderstand that choice. And it is about what happens when the applause is no longer the loudest thing in the room. For Catherine, the quiet may not be emptiness. It may be the thing she fought for. But for the people who loved her as a star, it can still feel painful to see. Because we remember the woman who seemed untouchable. We remember the confidence, the smile, the black hair, the gowns, the music, the way she entered Hollywood as if she had always belonged there. And now we see a woman who has lived long enough to know that belonging to Hollywood is not the same as belonging to yourself. That is the truth beneath the image. Catherine Zeta-Jones did not lose her light. She learned to protect it. And there is something heartbreaking about that, because it means the light cost her something. It means the glamour was never free. It means every photograph the world admired may have been taken during a chapter we did not fully understand. Maybe that is why people still feel so protective of her. Because Catherine does not feel like a scandal. She feels like someone who gave the world beauty while privately carrying pain. She feels like someone who did everything people ask women to do. She was talented. She was elegant. She was strong. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was honest. She was disciplined. She was brave. And still, life was not easy on her. That is hard to watch. But it is also why her story matters. Because somewhere, someone watching this knows what it feels like to be seen as strong while secretly being tired. Someone knows what it feels like to care for a sick spouse. Someone knows what it feels like to ask for help and fear what people will think. Someone knows what it feels like to watch children grow up and leave behind a silence no one warned you about. Someone knows what it feels like to step away from the world and have people call it failure, when really it was the first healthy choice you had made in years. That is why Catherine's story reaches beyond Hollywood. It is not just about fame. It is about the private cost of surviving beautifully. And Catherine has survived beautifully, but not easily. The world once looked at her and saw perfection. Now, maybe we can look at her and see something better. A woman who dreamed young, a woman who worked hard, a woman who became legendary, a woman who broke quietly, a woman who sought help, a woman who kept loving, a woman who stepped back, a woman who is still here. And sometimes, still being here is the greatest victory of all. But there is another part of Catherine's story that makes the present feel even heavier. It is the simple fact that the world keeps asking women to remain visible, beautiful, and unchanged, while life keeps asking them to become something else. Catherine is now at an age where Hollywood often becomes uncomfortable with its own former goddesses. It praises them as legends, but it does not always know what to do with them as living women. It wants the memory, not always the reality. It wants the photograph from the golden year. It wants the red carpet moment. It wants the face it first fell in love with. But a woman cannot remain a photograph. A woman has to live. And living changes everything. It changes the face. It changes the body. It changes the priorities. It changes the rooms a person wants to enter. It changes what feels worth the cost. For Catherine, that change seems to have happened slowly, quietly, and with intention. She did not make a dramatic announcement that she was leaving one version of life behind. She simply became less available to the machine. That is what people sometimes miss. A quieter life is not always a smaller life. Sometimes it is a life finally built around what a person needs instead of what the public wants. After decades of being watched, Catherine appears to have chosen a kind of privacy that many stars only talk about wanting. She does not seem desperate to prove that she can still dominate every room. She does not need to. She already did that. She does not seem desperate to convince people she was once great. She already was. She does not seem desperate to compete with younger actresses for the same kind of attention she had in the past. That is not defeat. That is perspective. But perspective can look like disappearance to people who only understand fame as noise. And the quieter Catherine becomes, the easier it is for the public to misunderstand her. They may think she is gone. But she is not gone. They may think she has faded. But maybe she has simply stopped standing under the harshest light. There is a difference. A faded star has no choice. A woman choosing peace does. And Catherine's peace, if that is what we are seeing, was not handed to her. It was earned through years of pressure most people never saw clearly. Think about the emotional math of her life. She was famous young enough to be objectified before she could fully control the story. She became a symbol of beauty so powerful that it sometimes overshadowed her craft. She married into one of Hollywood's most legendary families. She became a mother while still being scrutinized as a movie star. She stood beside a husband's cancer. She faced bipolar II disorder in public. She returned for treatment when she needed it. She separated, reconciled, adjusted, continued, and kept walking. That is not a simple life. That is a life built out of pressure. And yet she rarely turned that pressure into bitterness. That may be one reason people still respond to her with such affection. Catherine Zeta-Jones never seemed to ask the world to feel sorry for her. She did not build her identity around suffering. She did not make pain her brand. She remained elegant, maybe too elegant, because sometimes elegance hides the wound so well that people forget the wound exists. But the wound exists. It exists in the scar from childhood. It exists in the years of being judged for beauty before being recognized for talent. It exists in the fear of Michael's illness. It exists in the public confession of a private diagnosis. It exists in the quiet decision to step back. It exists in the empty nest stage of motherhood, when a woman who has been needed every day wakes up and realizes the rhythm has changed. That last part is not dramatic enough for gossip magazines, but it may be one of the most human parts of the whole story. Because the world can understand an Oscar. The world can understand cancer. The world can understand a red carpet marriage. But not everyone stops to understand the quiet grief of a mother whose children have grown. For years, Catherine was not only trying to manage fame, she was trying to build a family inside fame. That is not easy. Fame does not naturally protect children. It exposes them. It follows them. It makes ordinary family moments feel like public property. So when Catherine became more private, maybe part of that was not only for herself. Maybe it was for them. A mother's love does not always look like sacrifice in public. Sometimes it looks like saying no. No to another trip. No to another camera. No to another role that would take too much. No to a version of success that requires absence from the people who need you most. And if Catherine said those quiet no's, the world may never know how many there were. That is the hidden cost of a career that becomes quieter. People see fewer headlines. They do not see the choices behind them. They do not see the school mornings. They do not see the private conversations. They do not see the moments when a woman decides that being present matters more than being seen. And now, as those children become adults, Catherine faces a strange second half of motherhood. The part where all that presence has done its job. The part where the children do leave. The part where love becomes less about holding and more about letting go. For someone who already rebuilt her life around stability, that transition must carry its own weight. Not because it is tragic in the obvious way, but because it is tender. Because it is beautiful and painful at the same time. Because it reminds a woman that even the roles that save her will change. She was once the girl leaving Swansea, then the actress arriving in Hollywood, then the wife on red carpets, then the mother protecting children, then the woman seeking help, then the survivor choosing quiet. And now she is something else again. That is what time does. It keeps asking a person to become new versions of themselves, even when the public only wants the old one. Catherine's old image is powerful. It is almost impossible to forget. The dark hair, the sharp eyes, the old Hollywood beauty, the sense that she has stepped out of another age when movie stars still seem mysterious and grand. But the Catherine of now may be more important, because she is not an image anymore. She is a woman living after the image. And living after the image is hard. It means people compare you to yourself. It means every appearance becomes a conversation. It means fans say they miss the old days, even when they mean it lovingly. It means strangers take photographs and decide what your face, your body, your marriage, your career, and your silence must mean. It means you are never allowed to simply be. And yet, Catherine seems to be trying. Trying to be a wife without turning marriage into performance. Trying to be a mother without making motherhood a publicity tool. Trying to be an actress without letting the industry devour her stability. Trying to be honest about mental health without letting a diagnosis define the whole story. Trying to age without apologizing for being alive longer than the public fantasy. That is not easy. That is why the present is hard to watch. Not because she is weak, because she has had to be strong for so long. There is a difference. Weakness breaks a person quickly. Long strength wears a person down quietly. And Catherine Zeta-Jones has had to carry the kind of strength that looks beautiful from a distance and exhausting up close. She had to be strong as a girl leaving home. Strong as a performer fighting to be taken seriously. strong as a movie star being turned into an object, strong as a wife beside illness, strong as a mother under scrutiny, strong as a woman saying the words bipolar II disorder in public, strong as a partner in a marriage people kept analyzing, strong as a woman stepping back while people called it fading. At some point, even strength deserves rest. Maybe that is what we're seeing now. Not an ending, a rest, a long breath after decades of being looked at. And maybe that is why fans feel such tenderness toward her. They are not only looking at Catherine Zeta-Jones, the celebrity. They are looking at someone who reminds them of their own lives in ways they did not expect. Because many people know what it means to be strong too long. Many people know what it means to smile at work while something at home is breaking. Many people know what it means to care for a sick spouse. Many people know what it means to carry a diagnosis quietly. Many people know what it means to raise children and then stand in the silence after they leave. Many people know what it means to be misunderstood when they finally choose peace. That is why Catherine's story does not feel distant. The details are famous, but the feeling is ordinary. And that may be the most powerful thing about her. She was extraordinary enough to become a legend, but human enough for people to see themselves in her pain. The world saw Catherine Zeta-Jones as perfection, but perfection is lonely. Perfection gives people something to admire, but not always someone to understand. It creates distance. It makes suffering look impossible. It makes people think, how could she hurt when she is all that? But pain does not ask whether you have an Oscar. Pain does not care if people call you beautiful. Pain does not stop at the gates of a mansion. Pain enters quietly. It sits at the table. It follows you into hotel rooms, hospital rooms, dressing rooms, bedrooms, and bathrooms where no cameras are allowed. Catherine knows that. She knows that glamour cannot protect a person from fear. She knows that love cannot prevent illness. She knows that success cannot cure a medical condition. She knows that being admired is not the same as being understood. And maybe now, after all these years, she has stopped asking admiration to do what only peace can do. That is what makes her current chapter so emotional. It does not give the audience the easy drama of collapse. It gives something more adult, the drama of continuation, the quiet drama of a woman who is still here, still choosing, still managing, still loving, still aging, still carrying herself with dignity in a world that often wants women to vanish if they cannot remain exactly as they were. Catherine has not vanished. She has changed, and change is not failure. It is life. But for those who love the old image, change can feel like grief. We grieve the time when movie stars seemed larger than life. We grieve the era when Catherine first walked onto the screen and seemed almost impossible. We grieve the version of ourselves that first saw her. We grieve the years that passed while she was quietly fighting battles we did not know about. And in that grief, there is also gratitude. Gratitude that she survived. Gratitude that she told the truth. Gratitude that she made it possible for other people to hear the words, "There is no shame in seeking help," and believe them. Gratitude that she showed a woman could be glamorous and struggling, strong and tired, private and brave, changed and still worthy of love. That is Catherine Zeta-Jones now. Not just a star. Not just a beauty. Not just a wife. Not just the Oscar winner. A woman who has lived enough life for the image to crack and the truth to show through. And the truth is more moving than the image ever was. Because the image was perfect. But the truth is human. And human is what lasts. Years from now, people will still watch Chicago. They will still watch the Mask of Zorro. They will still see that extraordinary face and that controlled fire and understand why Hollywood once stopped and stared. But those performances will not be the whole legacy. The legacy will also be the woman who admitted she needed help. The woman who did not let a diagnosis erase her dignity. The woman who stood beside illness. The woman who came back when she could and stepped back when she needed. The woman who allowed the public to misunderstand her quiet because her health, her family, and her peace mattered more than being constantly explained. That is a different kind of courage. And maybe it is the kind that matters most after the applause fades. Because applause is loud, but it does not stay. A camera flashes bright, but it does not keep a person warm. Awards are beautiful, but they cannot hold your hand in a hospital room. Fame can fill a room, but it cannot make the room less lonely when the people you love are hurting. Catherine learned that, not in theory, in life. And that is why her story now feels so hard to watch and so important to tell. She is not a fallen star. She is not a tragic ruin. She is not a woman whose story ended when the roles slowed down. She is a survivor of the cost of being seen. And maybe after decades of being seen by everyone, she finally deserves to be understood. Catherine Zeta-Jones did not lose her light. She learned to protect it. And if that light now appears softer, quieter, more private, maybe that is not because it is dying. Maybe it is because for the first time, it belongs to her. From 0 to 10, how much do you think the public truly understands what women like Catherine carry in private? Leave your number below. If Catherine Zeta-Jones has ever inspired you, leave a comment with her name. Not just for the actress, not just for the beauty, not just for the Oscar winner, for the woman behind all of it. For every person who has ever carried something invisible and kept smiling anyway. And if this story moved you, subscribe, because every week we look beyond the image, beyond the headlines, and beyond the perfect photographs to find the human being inside the legend.